Everything exists in the world, everything is possible. However, if your nervous system isn't safe to take the step, if you are so attached to your story and you don't even know where it comes from and why, it will be very hard to move.
Hi, and welcome back to the Turning 30 podcast, a place where we talk about what it's really like to be a woman in your 30s. I'm your host, life coach Emma Wilson, and I'm here to help you feel better, get unstuck, and be more confident in your 30s. Really excited today to invite back onto the podcast, probably for the fourth time, we've lost count, my incredible friend Jelena, who really, every time we're together, we've just recently met up. She came to Thailand and we were reunited. And whenever we're together, I always just want to press play because our conversations are so interesting, they're so insightful. And while she was here, we were talking about, the way that we met, which was on a trip in Costa Rica, which was really, for both of us, very serendipitous. And the reason that we were even there was because things in our lives had not gone according to plan and we've been feeling stuck. I had my own path, she had her own path, and our paths crossed in a very beautiful way. And often when Jelena and I are together, we're talking about these topics of how to get unstuck, how to build aligned life, how to get into a new space in your life. And a big part of that I have realized and that we're talking about in today's episode is changing your environment. Getting yourself into rooms with people who will inspire you, who will expand you, who are living a similar path to you or a path that you want to be on. And it's something that I think is actually overlooked a lot because we talk a lot about doing the work on yourself and your personal practices, which are all really important and things we also talk about in this episode. But often overlooked is how important it is to get out of your comfort zone, your everyday environment, and actually put yourself in a position where you can meet new people, whether that's for a romantic relationship, but actually in this episode we're talking more about getting yourself into environments where you can actually follow your true authentic path. And Jelena and I both come from, I'm almost 39, Jelena recently turned 38, and we've had such expansive decades in our 30s where we have both prioritized changing our environments to be more conducive to the life that we want to live. And Jelena, she was a corporate banker living in London. She was really in that world of, the straight and narrow, the mainstream path. And she had her world completely turned upside down when her personal life completely changed at the end of her 20s. And her 30s have been all about self-discovery. And at the same time, I also used to work in corporate London and have moved countries multiple times now. And both of us just feel that shaking things up and actually on purpose, consciously and intentionally putting yourself in situations that aren't your comfort zone or your social conditioning is really key to living a life in your 30s that you actually love. So this episode is diving into all of these things, how you can get unstuck and how your environment plays such a huge part of that. And a couple of years ago, Jelena and I ran a retreat together called the Align Retreat. It's one of the proudest moments of my business. And the reason we wanted to talk about this episode today, this topic that we're diving into, is because the Turning Retreat, which is my brand new retreat, it's not actually with Jelena. She won't be joining me, sadly. Hopefully we'll do another one together in another few years. But for now, it's just me and I have another retreat guest coming in. And it's all about how to break away from the environment that you're in every day in order to come back to your true authentic self so you can live a life in your 30s that you are just absolutely in love with. And me and Jelena were speaking a lot when we were together just now, just about how retreats are such a powerful container to do this work, coming together with a group of women and really putting your middle finger up to what society says so you can come back to who you really are and the life that you are desiring and manifesting. And it really is like putting everything that you're working on into turbo speed. I really like to think of retreats as incubators where you could do this work in such a safe space obviously with facilitators who are experienced and know how to do it. But there's something really powerful about coming together with other women who are also doing this work. So, on that note, before we dive into the episode, I just wanted to invite each and every one of you to look at the Turning Retreat. It's a week-long retreat from the 4th to the 10th of October, taking place in Koh Samui, inside the jungle. It's a few minutes from where I'm currently living right now, the most magical part of the island. It's called Chongmon. And we're going to be staying in a beautiful wellness resort. There's this stunning jungle shala and a separate yoga studio, which also backs onto the jungle. And there we're going to be doing incredible somatic work. I'm going to be taking you through a transformational coaching program written by yours truly. And I've invited Katie Gummerson. She is a energy healer, a somatic coach, and a breathwork facilitator. And we're going to be doing so much more than all of this, including a cacao ceremony. We're going to be doing a floating sound bath, which is incredible. It's literally a sound healing session whilst you're lying on mattresses in a swimming pool, floating. It's honestly the best experience. I am really excited to host this. It's going to be, I know, another very proud moment of my business. We already have 7 spots taken, and with 4 months to go, there are 8 spots left. So if this is something that you have availability for in your calendar, please come and join us. I will leave all of the information in the show notes and also a link to book a call with me. If you're not sure, debating whether this is the right thing for you to do, you can book time in and we can speak one-on-one to see if it's the right fit for you. I really hope that this episode lands with you, and whether you decide to come on the retreat or not, that you will start putting yourself in new environments, in new rooms. One room you can put yourself in is the Turning community room, or we're doing a lot of this work. I am really looking forward to hearing what you think of the episode. And on that note, let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back for the 4th time, maybe?
Oh my God, this is the 4th time. Wow.
To the Turning 30 podcast. I feel like it has been a long time coming again till we have recorded something again. So really excited to have you here. And I guess I should just start by saying, for those of you who haven't come across Jelena yet by following me and my past podcast recordings, then I'll put in the show description below the very first podcast that we did together, which broke the internet. Do you remember that amazing episode that we did that got, for me, the most amount of downloads ever when I first put it out?
Yeah, of course I remember. I was feeling so scared when it was going live. And yeah, because that was really vulnerable. But I'm really glad that I did it, because I feel like that was the turning point for me to really own my story. So I want to thank you for that episode, and also for having me back for the 5th time. We never run out of things to talk about. So yeah.
We never do. And all of our conversations that we actually have in real life as well should also be recorded, but we can't actually do that. So we'll just get the podcast mics out instead. So yeah, I was saying that I will link that episode because I don't want this to be another, retelling of the story and opening that box from the beginning, of course, but it's such an incredible story. So recommending to everybody to have a listen to that, after, if you've not listened to it already. And I think what we want to shed more light on today, or have a conversation about today, is the circumstances that you need to prosper, to bloom, to thrive in your 30s. And what we want to dive into is life decisions, life pivots, and all of the big life decisions in your 30s, but also what are the, say, optimal circumstances in order for those things to happen. And I want us to talk about it in relation to our own personal experiences. So I know that is something that, you've changed environments a lot over the last few years. I've changed my environment many times as well. And we have so much experience when it comes to this. So how does that topic sound to you?
Yeah, perfect. Something I can chat about for hours and hours, because it's really something that I have experienced. And just to paint the picture, the conversation that we started having is when someone is really doing the work. They're working on themselves. They're really trying to see the root cause and change their habits, and they're really working on themselves. Yet they fall into the same patterns, yet something doesn't really click, or they're drawn back into the behaviors that have hurt them in the past and continue doing so now. So, what is it? And then the conversation started, yeah, like, well, of course, if you are doing all the inner work you want to do, however, your environment is still chaotic, your nervous system still thinks you're unsafe. You're unsafe in your new habits, you're unsafe in your new ways of being. So it's much easier to be dragged back to what used to feel safe and no longer does. So that's how our conversation starts, because both of us have moved countries, have changed environments, have changed group of friends, and not as a like one day I just changed everything, but gradually we started appreciating the power of new environment and actively creating new circumstances to bloom, to thrive, to create a life that's conducive to all the inner work that has been done already.
Yeah, I really love that. And what was coming up for me as you were just sharing was something that I think in my coaching experience, in the coaching like school of thought that I've come from, we were really taught that you have this like power of the mind to basically change anything, and that it doesn't really matter what the circumstances are, because you change your thoughts, change your results. And whilst I do think there is obviously something in that, and that the way that we perceive things, or the way our mind perceives the world, is important, or not even important, it can change everything. I still think that this teaching skips over the importance of environment. And I think that sometimes I used to really get stuck on it when I first became a coach, when I was a baby coach, back 8 years ago, because it would be like, okay, so change your thoughts, change everything. But then what if the physical place where I am right now, whether that is the house that I'm living in, or the relationship that I'm in, or the city or the country that I'm in, or like we said, the group of friends, what if they aren't conducive to actually give me the tools that I need, or the opportunity, the possibility that I need to really change? So it was something I used to get stuck on quite a lot. And I've definitely come to a conclusion with it that both are important. There are different environments that will create different opportunities for you. And that has been a really important thread to my life the last few years. And I think that it also really links, which we can obviously talk about because we love talking about the way that we met. But, when I was going through massive change in my life at the age of 33, I decided to change my environment and go on this trip to Central America, where we obviously met in Costa Rica. And I think that was really the start of understanding just how, almost like you can change your thoughts at any time, but the environment that you're in can be a huge catalyst for such internal and external growth. So I'd love to hear your take on this. I know that you come from a different coaching background to me, so maybe never had that, specific frame of mind, but it's definitely something that I've debunked and moved away from over the last 8 years.
Yeah, 100%. First of all, I do agree that everything is starting with an internal change. So, in that, we do agree. However, there is only that many things you can do with your mind, because a lot of them also live in the body, in the nervous system. So, I have also the somatic glands where there's still things stored. And in order for them to shift and change, a few more things need to change for that to be a more favorable environment for that to happen. So it's not impossible, but here we are talking also about giving yourself a helping hand, because as I said, there's so many things you can do internally, but then if everything around you is still bringing you back, then how can you really thrive within that? An example I often like to use is that, for example, if it's fish, they're swimming in dirty water. You can take out the fish and clean the fish, but if you're going to put them back into the dirty water, they're simply going to observe the environment again. Or similarly, if we are talking about planting trees or planting anything, I used to have a house plant and I was just so obsessed, like, why doesn't it grow? And I was pruning and I was like trying to help it. And I was like, wait, actually, right now it's in the shade, but what if I put it in the sun and closer to window? Just by changing environment, suddenly everything I was already doing was already working. It was just not in the right environment. So that's why I mean that everything is possible. You can really do it with the power of your not just mind, but also somatic experience and also energetics. Once that starts shifting, things start naturally to rearrange in your day to day. If you are simply staying stuck in the environment that really your nervous system doesn't like, your nervous system feels unsafe and so on, it will be harder. So here we are talking about circumstances in which it's more likely that you are going to meet yourself in the version you are becoming, as opposed to being dragged constantly backwards. And in my own experience, just speaking purely from my own experience, when I left London and I was 15 years in corporate and really lived a big city life, when I was back then and already feeling like it was not suiting me anymore, it was not serving me anymore, and I want to leave. And I was talking to my friends in London, they're like, well, everyone's kind of struggling, so that's okay. So it's like, oh, okay, so it's not just me, then that somehow it would be normalized. However, then I went this big trip in Costa Rica and started meeting people like you, like our dear friend Hillary, like others who are on this path living an alternative life. And they were all saying the same thing. I used to be fill in the blank. I used to be a lawyer and now I'm doing this and I'm happy. I used to be a doctor in the and now I have a surf shop in Costa Rica and I'm happy. So I started to see how even that change in the environment where there were more examples that I found more expansive, it made me feel like if they can, I can do that too. And second thing that started happening already when I decided to quit everything and move to Mexico from London, like really handed in my laptop, hung up my keys, sold my flat, just like quit everything and moved to Mexico. And I really felt the call to contribute, to share what I have been learning, human design and self-inquiry, meditation, breathwork, all of these things really helped me on my path. And I wanted to share them. And I remember how scary it was to share it on Instagram, where my past environment would see it. However, doing it in Mexico was way easier because no one knows. I can be anything I want. And that felt so empowering. So I really started my business there in person without any social media presence because there were still fears of being seen. However, what was moving through me was so powerful. And I was lucky enough to give myself an opportunity to do it in a completely new environment where I was not worried what people would think because I knew I'm doing it from a good place and I knew what I have learned is helpful. So then immediately everything starts realigning and taking shape in a different way, how it would have taken shape for in the past in London, where I still had to deal with all the fears. So giving myself this almost mandatory expansion was the best thing I could have done. And I see this happening again and again when I still work a lot in person. And we have done a retreat together. And when these environments are created where people come together in a retreat setting, a training setting, or course setting, where they all leave their day to day, their routine, their favorite place to take coffee, their conversations with their friends, everything that they're super used to, when they leave that and suddenly there's more chances of a breakthrough to happen and stick because it's not just something that they have read on Instagram or have learned in a 90-minute masterclass. They are actually day in, day out in a different environment with different people, learning about themselves, and clicks that start happening. They're long lasting because they just have given themselves at least a few days outside of their norm without being dragged back in. So that helps form new neural pathways. And then it becomes easier those thoughts that you're trying to change in your mind to stick because there's more space for them to actually land and make a long-lasting difference.
I want to go back to what you just said when you were talking about your life in corporate London. And obviously I had a very short-lived, much shorter lived than you life in corporate London, but was also, I can very much resonate with that feeling. And just how you said how, you were surrounded by people who that is the norm, and you're surrounded by people who are, have chosen this life. Either they've chosen it because that is the right environment for them, that is how they have chosen to live their life, or they are stuck in it the same way, or stuck in it in a way, they're not going to make change. And we often, when we're in these wrong environments, let's say, or the environments that aren't conducive to our desires and living our own like aligned, authentic paths, it's funny, isn't it? We often speak to the people around us in our everyday lives and look to them for the permission. We look to people that we know because they're our friends. This is who we have contact with every day. But the people around us, and also family members as well, are coming from that same conditioning or that same world that we are trying to, I don't want to say escape from, but we're trying to explore the possibilities of moving away from it. But our instinct always tells us to go and ask them. And of course, like you said, they're always going to say, oh, but everybody feels like this, or this is just being an adult, or this is just working life. I used to hear that a lot when I was a lawyer, and I was like, this just can't be it. Like, this isn't my calling. This isn't what I want to do. And it was, the depression of the tube and the corporate law office and just, yes, all of that. If I asked anybody else about it, they would say, but this is adulthood, you have to make money, you have to do all those things. There isn't another way. And because I was thinking actually about our conversation today, I was remembering that a really good friend of mine, and he also was a colleague at the time, when I announced that I was leaving London, quitting my job in law, not following up on my training contract, which was very rare, like almost nobody got a training contract and didn't go on to qualify as a lawyer in the law firm. And he was in the law firm as well. And I told him I'm leaving, and I'm also leaving the UK. I'm moving to Tel Aviv. And I remember when one day I think we'd been playing squash together. How London is that? Before work. And he just turned to me and he said, but you're not really going to leave, are you? Like, that's just not what people do. Like, you're not going to actually move country. Why would you do that? You're not going to give up this job in law. You've got an amazing salary. And I remember just looking at him and being like, wow, you really don't believe that someone would do that. And I was remembering the conversation really clearly because it really stuck with me at the time. And I haven't actually thought about it since. And just how much we turn to people who aren't the right people. And that's why I think I'm so dedicated to creating spaces online and in person for people who feel different, who feel this nudge, niggle, calling, awakening, however you want to phrase it, and they need to speak to somebody else who's going through it. It's just so important to surround yourself with the people who at least get it. Not everyone has to be doing exactly the same thing as you, but those voices of the people who are in your conditioned space, your before, let's say, they're only going to compound your fears. They're only going to, play to those parts of yourself that are nervous to make the big change.
Yes, 100%. And I have my own stories of even my employer when I told them that I'm quitting and I wanted to hand in my laptop. They were like, keep the laptop, see you in the month. It's still the same laptop that I'm dialing in from today, which is, I have it for 5 years now. So never happened. Sending love to the previous employer. But I think what's important to speak about here is projections. When this colleague of yours said, you're never actually going to go and do it, what he really means is, I'm never going to do it. So it's really important to distinguish what's theirs and what's yours. Because people have stories. We all have our own internal narratives. It's just how human mind works. It's there for safety, for understanding, for reading patterns, to keep us safe. So if your story is that I'm never going to leave, you're never going to leave. If your story is I want to leave and I can, you will if you want to. So it's important to check what's actually internally running. So if there is something you want to do, but you have a but following after that sentence, That but is your story, as in like, I really want to go and change my life and meet someone and live in a different country and leave London or leave wherever I am, or not even leave. Maybe you just want to have a different career or different way of being, different attitude to things, different relationship with your parents, whatever it is. If you have yes, but whatever that but is the story which keeping you stuck. So it's important to check those stories, write them down, get familiar. Whose voice is it? Since when this has been running my show? How am I experiencing myself when I believe this to be true? What if it wasn't true? There's so many tools to change the stories. There's so many tools, and I know that stories and thoughts and narratives is something you work with clients a lot. And yeah, until we become aware of what's running the show, it's very, very hard. Once we become aware and start questioning whether they are true, life becomes easier and things start to lift. But it's important not to believe your own stories, which are keeping you stuck. And even more important, not to believe stories and projections of other people. When I was leaving London, I got this question a lot and it used to trigger me a lot. It's like, yeah, what's your plan? The thing is that I didn't know my plan and I was scared as well. However, what I knew is that I had no option but to leave because that's what my intuition was guiding me towards. And I'm so glad I listened. However, it really wasn't helpful when people were projecting their fears, being like, oh my God, that's so scary. I'm like, I know, I'm the one doing it. So please stop saying it's scary. It doesn't help.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely about the projection. I've had that so often, all of my 20s and 30s, that I've been on this alternative path to most of the people from my before life. So I completely agree with that. And I want to speak a little bit about the stories, or really about the fears, and I want to put them into a practical what to do if you are, and let's give like a really specific example, somebody who is living in their life right now, whether that's a career that they're not loving or a place that they don't feel like they're thriving in, and they have a very strong story that but feels very strong. Oh, I'd love to one day move to Australia, but it's not possible for me. I could never financially like do that, or I couldn't be away from my family, or all of those things, but they still feel that pull. There's that something that's there that's making them really question about where they are right now. What do you do in those situations? Like, where do you start?
Yeah. And I want to send empathy and compassion to anyone who is meeting themselves in that place where the old life no longer serves and the new life feels very far away. I know that place, and actually, when I just started working, this in between, the messy middle, the stuckness was something that I really worked a lot with. And also, before I moved, now I'm sharing this as if like one day I decided to leave London. It wasn't one day. I think I overstayed my welcome in London for 3 years. I already knew I didn't want to be there, but I had these stories, and it was a really painful place to be. That's why I feel a lot of compassion for whoever finds themselves that way. And this is where also this piece of understanding where that story comes from is important, because if we are using this metaphor of the tree that just or the plant that just needs to move to a different environment, also before you do that you check the roots, right? You check the plant's roots, because if the roots are rotten you can't replant. So roots being your stories, your background, your past, understanding where the story comes from to treat yourself with compassion. What I work with clients on is internal family systems. So it's a tool where we start to understand that not everything is so black and white. So there is a part of you that wants to move and create a different life, and it really feels the call. And there is another part of you that's scared. And none of them are absolute, and they are not working in isolation. But that can create a lot of internal conflict. So one part wanting to do one thing and expand and grow, another part pulling you back. Both of them mean really well, because one part wants what's best for you, perhaps, and the second part, the one that's scared, also what's best for you, but it thinks that best for you is for you to stay in your zone of comfort and in your safety. So then the work begins of understanding where both of these parts come from, what are their intentions, because it can take a lot of energy and a lot of time being pulled into different directions without understanding what's the background of both of them and what are their intentions, what they're really trying to do, and integrating them into wholesome way of being, then that in between can really be very, very prolonged. So I don't wish that on anyone. So that's why whatever is happening, if you can try to understand where it comes from, if you can't do it yourself, of course you can seek support. You can also see whether there are mirrors in form of your friends you can trust that are not just projecting and giving you advice, but really can mirror back what they see in you. But yeah, so I think that starts with understanding and making whatever unconscious story there is, making it conscious and looking at it like, is it really true? Is it really true that it's absolutely impossible for me? Because I can give you 100 practical tips of how to do it on a budget, or how to do it in a different way, or how to take one small step. I can do that. And there's plenty, because there's volunteer programs, there is artist residencies, there's whatever you want to do, it exists. Everything exists in the world. Everything is possible. However, if your nervous system isn't safe to take the step, if you are so attached to your story and you don't even know where it comes from and why, it will be very hard to move. So that's where it does start internally. So it's you see how kind of going back and forth, that it's not just one or the other. They have to work together. So it's either you're working internally, but something is not moving, that maybe changing the environment is exactly the thing, or maybe you haven't done the work internally yet, and that's why you're so attached to the stories, and that's why you haven't made the move. But then the move becomes available. So it's not one or the other, or one follows the other. It's just actually it has to happen at the same time. Checking the roots, watering the plant, moving into the environment that is best for the plant. It all has to happen. And if it's only one part of it is happening, so you can move to a different environment, but if you're still kind of in your fears, in your stories, and in your narratives, then the change also is not going to be that grand, because there is still something internally that will be pulling you back.
Well, there's always that saying that I refer to when I speak to people about relocating, because I think there's often a misconception of, I just need to escape. And as soon as I go to a hot country, or somebody, wants to really move to a really different environment to where they've been living. And I guess like corporate to tropical is a good one that we've both done. It's a good example. But I always say, yes, that will for sure improve your quality of life, and your brain will remain the same. Your body will be the same body. Your reactions will be the same reactions. In some way, your stories will be the same stories. They might have a little narrative shift for a while, but you cannot escape yourself. And I think that's really a relocation thing that both of us know, having moved around so much, that exactly like you said, it has to be done in unison with this inner work. But I see it like the analogy of a bicycle, like with the wheels, the two different wheels, pedals, sorry. Like if you're just, if you're on a bicycle and one of the wheels is just the mindset stuff, and you keep doing that and you're stuck, you're not actually making moves, you're not booking that trip or quitting that job or moving country or whatever it's going to be, then the bike will fall over. Because if you're just pedaling on one side, it can't be balanced. But if you're just doing the actions, so you just keep making decisions and keep moving forward, but you're not doing the internal work, then the bike will also fall over. So you've got to be pedaling in unison for the bike to stay stable. But I say that, and then I always say, but start with the inner work. That's like the thing that kind of gets the bike just moving forward a little bit. Because I think it can be quite scary to just make a big snap decision. And I'm somebody who takes big risks and makes snap decisions, but the first reaction that happens as soon as you've made it can be quite terrifying if you've not actually sat with yourself and looked in the mirror.
100%. If your nervous system cannot hold what's coming, you will just be very dysregulated somewhere else in the tropics. But I think it is also a conversation not just about like leaving the corporate and moving to tropics, or it's not about relocating. Maybe someone doesn't even want it, or doesn't know, or doesn't know where. Like, it's absolutely fine. It's also changing environment in terms of information you consume, in terms of energy that you receive from people around you. And everyone knows exactly what I mean by that, because even though, it used to be woo-woo talking about energy, but you walk into the room, you feel a vibe. It's neuroception. There is a coin term for it now. There is something that we are actually receiving, which is very, very subtle. And it's not words, it's not conversations, it's on an energetic level. So stop poisoning yourself, whether it is the information, energy, environments, maybe it's substances, whatever it is. You have to stop taking in things that hurt you, and maybe the change of the environment can be actually, instead of going to the pub at 5 p.m., I'm going to find a ceramic studio where I feel really good because I can channel that into creativity and meet like-minded people. Maybe environment where I feel really good is, for me, it used to be like my breathwork studio, my yoga studio, going on retreats and meeting like-minded people who were into this kind of work. So it doesn't mean that change your environment, move somewhere else. It's not for everyone, but continuously placing yourself in environments, in conversations, into energy, into fields where you feel relaxed, good, inspired, creative, calm, it's super, super important.
So important. What actually comes up for me when you're speaking that I think a lot of my audience will resonate with is this feeling of the energy of being around a group of friends who aren't necessarily vibrating at the same frequency as you. Potentially that's because they're at a different stage of life, they have different priorities, or maybe they're just in different stages of their consciousness right now. Maybe they are more focused on things that aren't as important to you as they once were. And I know that happens a lot with women in my world who, when they come into their 30s and their friends are doing things at a different pace and different stages of life, it can feel very unsettling because you are just in a different energy than your friends, and all of a sudden you do feel the need to change your environment. And yes, sometimes that is a full change of environment, but a lot of the time, like you said, it's about changing the environments even on a more weekly, daily pace, and it's not necessarily making a huge big life, seismic shift. It's just these small changes where you can meet like-minded people. And we all know, I speak about this day in, day out on my Instagram, here on the podcast, about my community, because the reason I started it was because I felt like so many women have this feeling of feeling left out, feeling different, feeling alienated in some way, and that feeling of loneliness that can come with that. So I wanted to bring together all the women who are in my space all over the world who feel that way, and literally put them in a room together. And it's so important, and we've said it a few times on the podcast, this like-minded thing, and just having people in each other's energy that you are able to connect in a more deep way, or even just because you have more similarities. And I want to just be really direct and say that for me, everything in my 30s and my journey of life so far opened up when I started to be in rooms with people who I actually just feel that click with and feel connected with. And you are such an example of that, because when we met in Costa Rica, we had this meet cute that ended up meeting a lot of other people as well. Obviously our friendship's been so strong since then, but we also ended up, socializing only for a short amount of time with another group of people, but a lot of us are now still in contact. And for me, that really did open up this new possibility of, okay, my life can be so different to how it's been. And I had great friends at the time, but now I can have other friends who also live all over the world and do different things. And yeah, it's just been such an important part of my journey, being in the same room as like-minded people. It's something that I can shout from the rooftops every day.
1000% for me as well. And also, I left my home country. I'm originally from Latvia, so I left when I was 19 to study in university. So I already did that kind of like a bigger jump when I was quite young. And now I'm looking back, oh my God, I was still a kid. And I did that like from a small town in Latvia with like 60,000 people to like one of the biggest cities in the world. And yeah, that was brave. Kudos to that 19-year-old who did it. And then I already noticed that, of course, when I did that, my friendship group shifted, and then I graduated from university, then I had my work colleagues, and then I had my friends in London. So that was like, again, a different group. So when I left, somehow I had that in me, that actually somehow I have made friends everywhere I go. this is not going to be an exception. So I know that's quite personal, and this is really maybe an advantage I had because I started doing these big jumps early on. But of course, like my all grown up life was in one city, kind of like almost in one area of London. So doing that it had different gravitas because it also was my income, my house. I was like suddenly at the age of 32, divorced, homeless, jobless. And I was like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? There was different flavor to that jump, but I still had the feeling that I really needed to change that because I just know this power of connections that inspire you as opposed to pull you back. And that's why when I started working, that was one of these things that I really wanted to bring in every space I create, where everyone feels like they belong. Because I guess as a kid, maybe somewhere I felt like I didn't belong for different reasons. We're not going to go into my childhood trauma discovery session, but
no, why not?
Next episode, watch this space.
Episode 6.
Exactly. We will call it psychoanalysis. But the thing is that it's the belonging piece is so important because I really see it now when I create trainings for breathwork facilitators, and everyone who joins is already a facilitator in their own right. So it's whether yoga teachers or Reiki masters, or there are different people already sharing their gifts with the world. And when 16 of them come into a space and they are in this environment where they're learning a tool that they're absolutely passionate about and unlearning everything that it is not truly them, plus connecting in a way that maybe at home it's not, that they don't feel super supported. So there is this connection that builds like, oh my God, we are walking this path together. We are in this together. How can we all thrive? There is no competition. There is just this uplifting way of being because everyone is on a similar path of sharing their gifts, of contributing positively and so on. And it's not just the shift that happens there. It's not just a mindset shift. It is not just environment shift. It's a huge energetic up level that makes you then timeline jump. So it's really these 4 days, it's an incubator of like shaking off anything that doesn't serve. And really then you are a lot more discerning of what you let back in, again, in the form of information, energy, conversations, friendships, food you consume, and everything else. You start making different choices. And this is what I feel even short period changes in your environment can really support you in.
Yes, and that's why I am obsessed with solo travel and retreats. You know, I've just got back from a 5-day trip to Vietnam, and it was very special for me because it wasn't a retreat, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it was just 5 days, like an incubator for myself to come back to myself. And I wasn't doing like lots of breath work or even journaling. It wasn't even about that. There was just some energy shift. And I really feel like something happened to me in those 5 days that like took me to another place. So that's why, firstly, I'm just a huge advocate of book the trip. Okay. Even if it's like a few days away, like you just said, 4 days, it doesn't even matter how long. If there's like an intuition pulling you to a certain place or a new environment, yes. And like you said, the power of retreats is something that I think until you've been on one, you can't really fully understand the intensity and wow, I don't even know like the word to describe it. There's something so special about being in a room or in a shala with people who are working on the same thing. And, you know, when we ran our retreat in 2023, can you believe it's nearly been 3 years, coming up to 3 years? That was my first ever retreat that I ran. And it was incredible. And I've been creating my next retreat, which is in a few months' time here in Thailand. And I've been reading through the feedback forms and looking through. And so many of the girls who were there even wrote what you just said, that while I can't believe it was only a 4-day retreat, it was completely life-changing, the things that I uncovered and the realizations and the understandings that I had about myself. And I'm still in touch with some of the girls who were on that retreat, and they often message and send updates and tell me, wow, that was such a turning point going on that retreat. There was something pulling me to it, even though I didn't know what it was. And a lot of them, quite a few of them flew in from abroad. We did it in the UK thinking, oh, our audience is like a lot. We both have strong communities in the UK and London. And we had people coming from US and from a few different places in Europe who actually flew in for those 4 days. And yeah, it was just, I guess for me, this evidence that got put into the evidence bank of how transformative it is when you're just in that incubator of other people. I was going to say women, but I know you also hold spaces for men as well. But yeah, there's something so special about that collective coming together and the collective energy.
Yeah, 1000%. And also they make friends with each other and they still travel together and meet up. And it's been wonderful to see. And also, but I do want to say, of course, there's different versions of events, but if you are following someone that whose work resonates and maybe, yeah, like you've done coaching, I just want to share that something happens when you are really not only being coached one-on-one session once a week, but also you are there in the environment where other people are going through a similar thing. You inspire each other, you really grow together. And this feeling of like, oh, I'm not alone in this. And I can ask questions and we can stay connected. We can hold accountability for each other. There is something so special and so transformative that happens. Yeah, that was an amazing retreat actually, because it was also my first that I hosted. I've done a lot of workshops by then, but really going into a portal of 4 days, I just remember that everyone walked out different, including ourselves. And it is the teachings, of course, it's the exercises, it's the workshops. It's very different when it is a really transformative coaching retreat versus like a 4-day yoga retreat somewhere. Like both are good, but they're just very different. If the one that I know that you're creating another one, and I just seen the program, it's amazing. And I just imagine that is going to be not only like a week to remember, it will be really like the turning point that every single participant needs, because they are taken on a journey of really meeting the new version of themselves within that.
Yes, exactly. And I know it always makes me think in my head that was not the first retreat that you had run because you're such a pro at events, but that's because you also had done so many in-person workshops when you were in Mexico that when you came to the retreat, it was almost like you'd done it all separately, but never one at one time over 4 days with people sleeping over. So it must have been really special for you to see that, because I've also been in your workshops before live. So I remember when we first went to the retreat, I was like, oh yeah, Jelena's run loads of retreats. And then you were like, no, it's my first one too. And I'm like, really?
So, whoops, what are we doing here? Yeah, but I think exactly as you say, it was just one of these things that really felt so natural to me, as if I've done it for lifetimes. But
Yeah.
there was, of course, part of it where I have done in-person work for years before that. So it was always workshops and events, gatherings, masterclasses, and so on and so forth. So then putting everything that I was doing in a 4-day container with you was super special. And then I actually understood the difference between a 2-hour workshop, 3-hour workshop, half a day retreat versus a 4-day container. There is definitely power in that because, of course, an insight can come or epiphany can come, but there is space for it to really land. And the program is built around how it happens and what needs to click for it to land. But, maybe it's not everyone's thing as well. It's also, there is travel consideration, timings, and so on. Of course, if you can't do that, do something smaller. But if you can, just try it and see, just watch your life transform.
Yeah, I think I just want to end the conversation about the retreats by saying, yes, of course, not everybody can go on a week-long retreat, but you can find community or find like-minded people locally. And, I know it obviously depends where you live in the world, but most places now you can contact like a breathwork teacher or a yoga studio or something. It's just so important to meet people in person. And I'm really saying that as somebody who has completely built their business online. The Align retreat was the first time I really went outside of running things online. My business took off in COVID during pandemics and lockdown. And, that's why I guess it was extra special to meet everybody in person. But even though there is such power in online and remote community, like my turning community that, you know, I run every day, there is something just really important as well. By going and actually being in the energy of other people, it just does change everything. Is there anything that we've missed that we've not spoken about?
Yeah, I think just to summarize what the initial topic was, I think it's like using again my favorite plant metaphor. It's like if all the things like are there and you're like have checked the roots, meaning you're working on where the stories come from and healing of the inner child, and if you're like watering and like changing habits and doing things that are nourishing you and like not doing anything that's basically poisoning you, and then things still don't seem to shift, maybe it's really just placing yourself where it feels good. But everything is possible. What I do want to leave it with, that everything is possible. Everything that you have this secret or not so secret desire. I really truly believe that what we truly desire, and when there is frustration of not having it, it's a way our intuition speaking to us that something is meant for us. So everything that's happening right now, if that is that stuckness, there is no like, yes, you are there right now. Meet yourself, be compassionate to yourself, be kind to yourself within that. But really, this is there for you to overcome it. You have overcome 100% of your challenges. You will overcome this one. So don't stay too stuck. Do what you need to do, whether it's like going somewhere or not going anywhere, whatever it is, just really understand that whatever is presenting is more love, more light, more goodness wants to be revealed in you. So really seeing it as not a reason to or an excuse to stay stuck, but just like, oh, something wants to be transmuted because it's presenting right now. If it didn't want to be transmuted, and if life didn't want me to experience it in the best possible way, it wouldn't have been presenting. I would have been just happy and content. If I'm not happy and I'm not content, there is something more for you, and it is really up to you to reveal what it is that needs to change for you to step into more of your power.
Amen. And something that I love that we've spoken about before, that I'll link the other podcast episodes, is the breadcrumbs, following those breadcrumbs, following those nudges, following those little signs, the synchronicities, all of the things that take you there. But honestly, just amen to everything you said. And I think we'll leave it on that note. And I will direct all the listeners to follow you to find out more about your world and your spaces that you can. You please let us know a little bit more about that and where we can find more information about you.
Right now I'm actually, as I mentioned, working with those who really feel called to be of service, those who want to step into facilitation, those who are already facilitating and want to make a positive impact on the world. Predominantly it's facilitators, space holders, therapists, yoga teachers, and other people in the field. So I have two offerings. One is a breathwork teacher training. Right now it's in person in Ibiza. The next cohort is in September, and it's the third cohort we are running this year. I'm also expanding, as you have correctly predicted. So I'm building out an online breathwork teacher training, which is going to be going live in autumn. In the meantime, I'm launching a program, which is a 12-week program for facilitators and space holders who are ready to step into the next level in their business. So it's for those who may be teaching a class here and there and know that they have something special to share, but maybe it's not clear how to really make it into a business. So the program is called Step Up, and it is for facilitators because also we are tackling trauma-informed principles of facilitation, which has been a massive change in the way I facilitate my work, and also has helped me to expand my business, because as a facilitator, if there is no stability, certainty, and steadiness in the principles you're using, that you're not hurting anyone, that you are really providing a safe space, then actually that can stall growth of business as well. So that's why it's a soul and strategy container. Plus we are learning trauma-informed principles, because that's a really, really important part of this work that shall not be skipped, but often is. So this is what I'm working on.
Amazing. I love that. So if that is relevant for anyone listening, do go and check out Jelena and listen to her previous podcast episodes. They're also so good. And I'll see everybody on the podcast next week.